The rain hadn't stopped pounding Willow Creek for 3 days when I fired up my food truck, the Hungry Nomad, in the heart of a suburban cul-de-sac. It was late August 2024, and a freak storm had turned our quiet Virginia neighborhood into a waterlogged disaster zone. Roads were rivers, power lines dangled like broken marionette strings, and families huddled in dark homes, their fridges useless. I was slinging barbecue for a National Guard captain named Marcus when the tow truck's hook slammed onto my truck's bumper like a gavel. The timing was brutal. Behind me, firefighters, faces gaunt from 16-hour shifts rescuing folk from flooded homes, waited for a hot meal. A paramedic named Lila was halfway through handing me a scribbled thank you note when Cynthia, the HOA president, strutted up, arms folded, lips curled into a smirk sharp enough to cut glass. She called the tow company. No heads up, no discussion, just her standing there like she just swatted a fly. My generator hummed, the grill sizzled, and a line of exhausted first responders snaked around the block, but Cynthia didn't care. Not about the state of emergency, not about the plates half-prepped. She waved her clipboard like a scepter and barked over the chaos, citing HOA Rule 4.1.7. No unregistered commercial vehicles. I told her this wasn't a taco stand at a county fair, this was disaster relief. She snorted, not my disaster. It started when the storm hit out of nowhere. Meteorologists had shrugged it off as a minor squall, but it dumped 10 inches of rain, knocked out power to half of Willow Creek, and left the town's infrastructure in shambles. Shelters overflowed, grocery stores were bare, and people were desperate. That's when I rolled out the Hungry Nomad. This truck wasn't just my business, it was my calling. I'd cooked for soldiers as an Army chef before pivoting to civilian life with a mobile kitchen built for emergencies. Outfitted with a 72-hour generator, satellite GPS, and solar panels, it was a lifeline on wheels. I'd served in hurricanes and wildfires, but this was the first time I'd parked in my own neighborhood to help. Word spread fast. EMTs who hadn't eaten in hours, families with flooded kitchens, cops on endless patrols, they all came. I served ribs, rice, and bottled water, took no payment, and kept the line moving. The local news even ran a story on me, calling me Willow Creek's food hero. That's probably what set Cynthia off. She'd had it out for me since I moved into Willow Creek 2 years ago. My mailbox was too modern for her taste. My driveway had a crack she claimed was an eyesore. But this was war. By the time I realized what was happening, the tow truck had my front wheels off the ground. I bolted out, a tray of cornbread in hand, demanding answers. The driver, a guy named Eddie, looked sorry but said he had orders. Cynthia stood behind him, pointing to her HOA handbook like it was the Constitution, ranting about unauthorized commercial activity. I told her this was community service, not commerce. She scoffed, claiming I was disrupting neighborhood harmony. The only disruption was the groans from hungry firefighters watching their dinner vanish. I offered to show her my state-issued emergency certification, laminated and tucked in the truck. She waved it off like it was junk mail. The tow truck hauled the Hungry Nomad away, and I stood there, helpless, as my livelihood and the community's lifeline disappeared down the street. The crowd murmured. A nurse named Sarah, who lived a few houses down, stepped up and tore into Cynthia. "Have you no shame?" she asked. Cynthia huffed, muttering about maintaining order, and marched off. Then, not an hour later, a catering van same size as my truck pulled into the exact spot to unload trays for Cynthia's HOA brunch. No tow, no clipboard, just fruit platters and her smug laughter. The hypocrisy burned. Getting my truck back was another slap. The impound lot charged me $2,500, claiming they were following protocol. The paperwork had Cynthia's signature and a note about HOA enforcement. It was a setup, but fighting in court would take months I didn't have. I paid, drove my rattling truck home, and stopped by the fire station. The chief, a gruff guy named Tom, saw my face and said, "They got you too, huh?" Word was spreading. Cynthia's stunt had delayed fire crews who'd been counting on my meals. A cop told me off the record they were considering a complaint, but Cynthia's husband, a big-shot bank exec, had the HOA lawyered up. They needed hard proof. I wasn't done. That night, I pored over HOA bylaws, called the city clerk for property codes, and emailed my FEMA contact for legal backup. Sleep didn't come not from anger, but from the gut sense that letting this slide would embolden Cynthia. She wasn't just a control freak. She was a menace, sabotaging relief efforts over a personal grudge. I had to fight back, not just for me, but for everyone she'd bullied. The next morning, I parked the Hungry Nomad on a church lot just outside HOA jurisdiction, flipped on the open sign, and watched the line form again: firefighters, cops, utility workers, families. They came not just for food, but for what I stood for. Cynthia watched from her porch, jaw tight enough to crack teeth. Then the news crew showed up. I laid it all bare. The tone mid-service, the brunch hypocrisy, the HOA's power trip. The reporter's jaw dropped. So, the HOA towed an emergency food truck to make room for a private party? I nodded. The facts didn't need embellishing. I ended with, I'm not asking for a parade. I just want to feed the people keeping us alive without being sabotaged. The story blew up. But Cynthia didn't back down. She doubled down, sending the health department after me. 2 inspectors showed up mid-service, citing an anonymous complaint. I invited them in. My truck was cleaner than a hospital, labeled, logged, sanitized. They checked my water filters, my FEMA-certified supplies, even ate a taco. Textbook, one said, grinning. They left, but I knew who'd sent them. Days later, 3 HOA board members, led by a nervous guy named Paul, told me Cynthia had filed a motion to declare me a neighborhood nuisance and evict me. They suggested I move. I laughed, bitter and loud. Move? For feeding people in a blackout? They shrugged. That night, I called a journalist friend and spilled everything. The next broadcast showed Cynthia's tantrum over a vegan wrap, beside footage of me feeding a kid clutching a stuffed bear. It went viral regional, not just local. Donations poured in. A National Guard sergeant emailed, "Your food kept my team going. Thank you." Then Cynthia crossed the line. I found my generator cords slashed, tossed in the bushes. My backup camera caught her, hoodie up but unmistakable. I called the cops. Tampering with emergency equipment during a disaster? That's a felony. They took the footage and started a case. The community rallied harder. Volunteers fixed my power lines. Kids painted signs, "Heroes eat here." At a relief rally, I threw with the fire station and Red Cross. The mayor gave me a commendation. Cynthia's house stayed dark, her curtains drawn. The city council later stripped the HOA's enforcement power and banned Cynthia from leadership for 5 years. Her reign was over. But the final twist? A tow truck rolled in not for me, for her. Cynthia's flashy golf cart, parked illegally by the park, was hooked up. She ran out, robe flapping, screaming about immunity. The driver pointed to the sign and kept working. Teens clapped. Someone yelled, "Need a vegan wrap for the road?" I didn't gloat. I turned up my music and kept cooking. Cynthia thought she could erase me, but she'd only built a bigger stage for the community she tried to control. Every new customer asked, "You the guy from the HOA fight?" I'd smile, hand them a plate, and say, "Yeah, the guy they tried to stop while I fed heroes." And they'd always say the same thing: keep fighting. So what do you think? Was I right to keep pushing back? Or should I have backed off to keep the peace? Is Cynthia just a petty tyrant? Or does she have a point about rules? Should HOAs have this much power in a crisis? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, and subscribe for more real-life showdowns.